Hey, I'm ZSH Blaze, welcome back to San Bernardino Zoo, where today we're starting a brand new area, Madagascar. We're going to be building it next to the Indian forest here. We're starting with a lemur walkthrough, and in preparation over in the islands in the zoo's greenhouse, we've been growing some new custom Madagascan plants. More on those later, but let's start building. It's been a long time since I've done any building for lemurs. The last proper lemur build I did was Lemur Heights in Tekton Zoo, back when there was about 100 of you watching. Long time ago now, so I'm really excited to start building this walkthrough. We're going to lay the paths in first for the whole area. Madagascar is going to be a pretty small area. There's going to be two habitats in here, the first being today's lemur walkthrough. And once the guests have got through there, it's going to join up with the Indian forest up this little slope here where we're going to get the paths up. So we're going to have two species of lemur in the habitat today, ringtailed lemurs and black and white ruffed lemurs. I've done some research on mixed lemur habitats. I've been to a couple of mixed lemur walkthroughs and a lot of single species lemur walkthroughs, and in my research I found out that the red ruffed lemurs can get quite aggressive with other lemurs, so I've decided just to go with the two other lemur species for this. We're going to be building an aviary style habitat for them, which we've just started here, getting the poles in that the mesh will go between. And we're going to be taking influence from a few different lemur walkthroughs that I've been to. The main one is the Ringtailed lemur walkthrough at London Zoo. It's got a really cool feature where the paths that the guests walk down have these wooden, almost like a cross between a wall and a path that's about 1 meter off the ground on either side of the path, which joins directly onto the terrain that the lemur's habitat is in. So the lemurs end up walking around within touching distance, and because they're 1 meter off the ground, they're much closer to you than they would be if they were just walking around on the floor, and they're not in any danger of getting stepped on. And in my experience, especially if it's a nice day, you get probably the best experience with lemurs that I've had in any zoo, I think. And the actual mix of lemurs I'm taking from Ponderosa Zoo, where they have this same mix of ringtailed and black and white ruffed lemurs, and that seems to work really well there. Alright, so we got the poles and the mesh in for one piece of this, which I've built on top of a grid piece to make it easier to work with. And then we're just going to copy it across to the other side of the habitat and then line it up properly. And this gives us the basis to work with. And then we can just copy this one piece all the way down this path here. And then we've got the basic structure of the aviary in. We'll put a central support along here. And then we'll add some vertical supports as well so it doesn't fall down. The concept for this habitat is to have the lemurs and the vegetation and some of their climbing elements as the focus. You shouldn't really notice the aviary style surround once you're done. And we're actually going to use the walkthrough gate for this as well. When I go to walkthroughs like this, there's always double doors. You can't just have one gate on its own like this, because as soon as the gate opens for the guests to get in, then you're liable for some of the animals to get out. So there's always a double gate system. So we built a custom double gate system for Wallaby Walkabout. And this time I want to combine that with an actual walkthrough gate so we get some animation as well. Because of the big aviary over the top of it, I feel like the default guest gate is a lot more in keeping scale-wise with this habitat than it was with Wallaby Walkabout, so happy to use it here. I'm just going to copy the rest of the mesh in to the end as well. I just match the angle of rotation of the mesh with the angle of rotation of the poles, and that gets it looking nice and smooth. Next up, we're going to bring in some of our African area theming, seeing as that's where Madagascar is. With like a little mini version of the wooden log walls that we use throughout Africa. I'm just going to have these to join the mesh onto the floor. And then we're going to create the double gate system that I spoke about. So we're going to copy forward the end of the aviary and then bring it down to more of a sort of human height. And then just modify this until we get something that looks nice. And then we'll drop in our custom walkthrough habitat gates. We'll get this positioned exactly over the habitat's walkthrough gate that's there already. If you've not seen the Wallaby Walkabout episode, this is the custom gate we made there. We've got a little soap dispenser on the front. We've got little mats to disinfect your shoes as you walk in and out. I really like this build, so I thought it'd be great to use it again here. Once we've got this lined up nicely, we're going to go in and change the colors just so they match with this new habitat better than what we have at the moment, give us a darker wood. And that's the mechanics of the habitat pretty much done. Let's move on to building an impressive and immersive entrance for the whole area. First up, we need a sign. So yet another one of Wyatt Andrews' Workshop's gorgeous fonts. I think this one is my favorite. Really striking font, looks great as an entrance. And we've got it sat on top of one of the custom plants that we built for this area. This is just a load of the fever trees sunk into the ground. I did a lot of research on plants of Madagascar, found a few species I like, and I created 3 plants. This was actually for an episode of Planet Wild a long time ago, which ended up never actually doing in the end. But I had 3 custom Madagascar plants that I've made that I was happy with. And in a minute, we're going to build a Madagascar tree from scratch. I'll show you that. We're going to add some of the lemur signs onto here as well. Just get a really nice welcoming sign for the area. And then finally, we'll use the grassland poles to hold up the letters. We've got white, red, and green here, which is the colors of the Madagascar flag. Thought that would be appropriate. And we're going to drop in another one of the custom plants behind it. These are some of the water lilies just turned upside down, but they look really interesting as grasses, and they match the particular plant that I saw in my reference photos. We'll add a load of grass in to fill things up, and then we'll fix the boundary between the path and the planting with these decals here, which we've just coloured to match the sand that the plants are planted into. So time consuming, but one of my favourite things to do in Planet Zoo, because when you're finished it just makes everything look so realistic and so satisfying. And then we'll move on to the custom Madagascar tree. This is the dead tree that we created for the desert house that we've used in a few habitats now. What we're going to do is take the birch pieces, which obviously have much more of a deserty or European look, and delete those and replace them with more of the standard brown climbing branches for more of an African look. And then we're going to drop one of the ferns onto the top, and then 2 of the basket ferns underneath. I don't actually know what species of plant this is. It was just in one of my reference photos in this Madagascar forest, and I really like the look of it. Not being able to find out exactly what species it is, but we're going to get pretty close to how it looked here. Just get some more of these climbing branches in to give it more of a gnarly look. Delete one more piece, and there we go, a nice custom Madagascar tree. We're going to have quite a few of these in the entrance, and we're going to use some of them as climbing apparatus inside the habitat as well. Just basically want to fill this habitat with as much of these custom plants as possible. There's a little cactus on the left as well, which I've made look more cactusy with some of the spiky plants hidden in it. And we're also going to sink in a few bushes into the ground here just to give some variety in the grass. And that entrance is looking really nice now. Let's get on into the habitat itself. The first thing we're going to do in here is to raise up the terrain so we can get these raised parts on either side of the path that I spoke about at the start. So we're just going to use the terrain stamp tool for this. Do it really simply to begin with. Just raise everything up just under 1 meter, I think it is, so that the lemurs are going to be much closer to the guests as they walk around the path. I've purposefully made the path quite winding, so it's more of an immersive experience, so you don't just walk down like a straight line till you get to the end and then turn right and you're at the exit. Much more immersive when you've got a winding path. And then it's onto the habitat's USP, so to speak, these wooden pieces which go around the paths and join it up with this raised terrain here. This is the bit that I've got from London Zoo. Just going to use a variety of different wooden planks to get a nice natural look to it. Once we've got one piece that we are happy with, we're just going to copy this all the way down the paths. Because the paths are curving, it makes it a bit more difficult. Once we've got it in the right place, we're going to have to do a lot of extending of some planks and shortening of other planks to get everything to match up properly. But it's worth doing because it looks really good in the end. Speaking of London Zoo, I've got some exciting plans for real-life zoos coming up on the channel. I'm going to be making a little trip to London Zoo later on this year to film some footage for a video about recreating real habitats in Planet Zoo. And I think in about a month or so, I'm considering a little European road trip to go and see one or possibly even more European zoos to film a zoo tour. So what I want to know is, which zoos do you guys want me to go to? Which zoos do you want to see? There's some obvious contenders that I've never been to, like Paradise, or various zoos in Holland, which I can't pronounce, but I promise I will learn how to pronounce properly if I actually go to them. Let me know in the comments, which zoos do you want to see? What are your favourite zoos? Or what zoos have you always wanted to go to but you've never got to see? And in about a month or so, I think I'm going to make a little trip over to mainland Europe and check some of them out. Back to the build, we're doing our usual sink a forage box into the ground trick. We're going to make it a bit more interesting this time by using some of the stalactite pieces as rocks at the back, just to join it on nicely to the fence. The terrain still looks a little rough here. We're going to be placing about 1 million pieces of buffalo grass later on in the video, so all these rough edges are going to be covered up. It's going to look as smooth as we like things to look in this zoo at the end. Now I want to do something else taken directly from London Zoo, just a really nice little touch I noticed in one of the videos I took last time I was there, which is just one of these standard sort of don't feed or harass the animals signs. Signs in Planet Zoo tend to be pretty enormous, so I thought I'd use the smallest sign and get my graphics program out and actually do a little bit of work in that to get a nice looking sign. And to make it look more realistic, I'm going to copy 3 of these billboards behind each other. We're only going to have graphics on the front one, but it just makes it look thicker and more like an actual sign that you would find in a zoo rather than a screen. Time to start on the climbing. So I'm going to use the rough rope piece to make a really realistic looking rope across the path here between one of our new trees and another one of the new trees on the other side of the path. Ironically, considering it's a rope, I discovered after I built this that this piece isn't climbable for reasons known only to Frontier. No idea why, but I'm still going to use it. We've already got a habitat where the animals climb over the guests in the Capuchin adventure, and I like how this looks so much. I'm going to keep it because we can do a rope if you're careful with the placement of any length, so we can get this the exact length to look realistic, where it starts far enough away from the path and then goes over the path. The normal base game ropes only come in a few different sizes and none of them really meet what I want for this. We're going to use one of the Oceanian rope pieces to tie it onto the trees as well. And then we're going to build some climbing that the lemurs can actually use. So we're going to use the basic climbing logs for this and just come up with a little design. This is from, I think I took this one from Ponderosa Zoo, if I recall correctly. I want loads of different climbing in here, so no need to build all of them from scratch. And then it's time to start on the rest of the planting. So we're going to throw in all the custom Madagascar plants that we've built and then go crazy with the buffalo grass like I mentioned earlier. There's so many buffalo grass pieces in here. With all the changes in the terrain, it's really important to get that looking realistic, and there's no quick way to do that. So we just spam loads of these in here until we're happy with how it looks. Now, building enough hard shelter for the animals is something that can be a struggle in Planet Zoo, but we're going to take advantage of one of the unique features of this habitat to make that process a lot easier, and that means it's time for Franchise Masters. If you've ever tried to build a realistic shelter for monkeys, lemurs, any kind of primate, one of the ones with the little openings in it where they can climb out and then get into the habitat, you will know how difficult it is to do in Planet Zoo, because in order for the animals to actually be able to get through the little holes, you can't build little holes. You have to build massive sort of 4-meter square gaps in the wall for them to get through, which is really frustrating. Now, with this habitat, because it's built Avery style with a mesh over the top, the game considers the mesh to be a solid piece, despite the fact that mesh is very obviously not solid. What that means is the whole habitat counts as hard shelter, and we don't actually need to build any hard shelter for the lemurs. And what that means is that we can therefore build a really realistic shelter for them with a little hole for them to get in and out of, with some branches for them to climb on. And it doesn't matter that they won't actually be able to use it because their hard shelter needs are already met. So this is a great little tip for franchise mode building for any small primates. So we're using the generic shelter that we use throughout this zoo. We've made a little opening in it there, and now we're gonna get some climbing for them to get in or out, or for it to look like they can get in or out. Ironically, we have to turn climbing off to stop them from actually escaping the habitat. And there we go, definitely the most realistic small primate shelter I've built. Hope you find that useful. We are almost done with this build now. We're just going to make the outside of the aviary look a bit more interesting. I've stolen this technique wholesale from my good friend Beezy, which is to turn nettles upside down and use them as a climbing plant. Great idea he came up with, so thanks for that, Beezy. The final thing to do is a little extra layer of realism for the habitat. Any walkthrough habitat you see in a zoo will always have supervision. There'll always be a keeper or a volunteer stood in the habitat, just making sure that people aren't messing with the animals in any way. So we're going to drop an educator in and just give them a work zone that is this habitat and a couple of things either side of the habitat, and they're just going to spend their lives walking through this habitat and looking like they're keeping an eye on things. And that's the lemur walkthrough done. Let's check it out. Ooh, mama, I love this entrance. It is really simple, but I think it's really effective. Here's our first guests coming in. I love walkthroughs, both in Planet Zoo and real life. And here are the lemurs. They do spend a lot of time up on these wooden boards, which is really pleasing. That's exactly what I wanted. I've put the majority of the food and the water and enrichment items on one side of the path, and then the majority of the climbing on the other side of the path, so they have a reason to go between them, and that means they spend a lot of time right next to the guests by the path, which is exactly what we want. We've got 3 of each species of lemur in here at the moment, so 6 altogether. These were all that were left of the lemur breeding zoo that I made a few weeks ago when we needed to get all the cash to rescue the animals in the zoo. Probably want about 10 to 12 in here when we're finished. It's already a really cool walkthrough, but it'll be even better once we've got more lemurs in here. One final aerial shot of the habitat, and then we will take a look at where we started today. And this is where we are now. Next week, we're going to be building a habitat for an animal I have never built for before, just behind this lemur walkthrough. I think you can guess what that animal is. We'll take a quick look at the Explorers Club monolith. Thank you, as always, to all of you who have joined. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, and hit the join button if you want to see your name up here as well. Thanks for watching. Bye.